Question 626. When can a broker, acting as the seller's agent, refuse to submit an offer to the seller from a potential buyer? A. If the broker's business associate has submitted an offer. B. If the owner is considering another offer. C. If the owner has provided the broker with specific instructions not to accept any further offers. D. Never, all offers must be presented. Correct answer is C. If the owner has provided the broker with specific instructions not to accept any further offers. The broker still has a duty to present all offers received to the seller, even if one comes from a business associate. The seller has the right to consider all offers. Failing to present an offer could be a breach of the broker's fiduciary duty and raise issues of self-dealing if the broker is prioritizing their associate's offer over others. If the owner is considering another offer, the broker must still present all new offers received, even if the seller is already considering another one. The seller has the right to compare all available offers before making a final decision. Withholding an offer could prevent the seller from receiving a better price or terms. As the seller's agent, the broker has a fiduciary duty to act in the best interests of the seller and follow their lawful instructions. If the seller explicitly instructs the broker not to present any further offers, perhaps because they have already accepted an offer or are very close to doing so, the broker is obligated to follow those instructions. While the general rule is that a listing agent must present all offers to the seller, this is subject to the seller's lawful instructions. If the seller explicitly directs the broker not to present further offers, the broker must comply. However, the broker should advise the seller on the potential implications of such instructions. Question 627. A major difference between real property and personal property is: A. Real property depreciates in value, personal property does not. B. Real property can be leased, personal property cannot. C. Real property is immovable, personal property can be moved. D. Real property can be paid for on an installment plan, personal property cannot. Correct answer is C. Real property is immovable, personal property can be moved. Real property, realty, includes land and anything permanently attached to it, such as buildings, trees, and fixtures. Its defining characteristic is its immovability. Personal property, personality, encompasses all other property that is not real property. It is characterized by its movability. Examples include furniture, vehicles, clothing, stocks, and intellectual property. Both real and personal property can depreciate or appreciate in value depending on various factors like market conditions, age, condition, and demand. While it's more common to lease real property, personal property can also be leased. Examples include car leases, equipment rentals, and furniture rentals. Both real and personal property can be purchased using installment plans or financing. Mortgages for real estate and financing for cars or appliances are common examples. Therefore, the fundamental distinction lies in the physical characteristic of immovability for real property and movability for personal property. Question 628. When two parties in a contract compose a new contract as a replacement, it is called an A. Reliction. B. Novation. C. Avulsion. D. Accession. Correct answer is B. Novation. Reliction, avulsion, and accession are all legal terms, describe property, but not refer to a contract. Reliction is the increase in land caused by the gradual recession or shrinkage of a body of water, such as a lake or sea, which gives the owner of the property more dry land. Avulsion occurs due to a sudden natural event, such as a powerful river, that erodes and abruptly detaches a portion of land from a coastal or riverfront property. The detached land may belong to the owner of the avulsed property if it moves to an adjacent location. However, if the avulsed land moves to a more distant location, its ownership may need to be determined according to law. Accession is when personal property permanently attaches to another item, raising its value. Novation is a legal term that refers to the creation of a new contract that extinguishes, overrides, a previous contract between the same parties. Both parties involved agree to replace the original contract with the new one, effectively terminating the old obligations and replacing them with the new terms. Novation can either be the substitution of a new party into an existing contract, or the substitution of a new obligation for an existing one. Question 629. When an agent is showing several properties to a potential client, she should do all of the following, except A. Choose homes that meet the client's needs. B. Provide scorecards for the client to rate the properties. C. Start the tour in the most impressive room in the house. D. Use technical jargon throughout the tour. Correct answer is D. Use technical jargon throughout the tour. Choose homes that meet the client's needs is a fundamental aspect of a real estate agent's service. By understanding the client's criteria, location, size, features, budget, the agent can show relevant properties, saving the client time and effort. Scorecards is a helpful tool for clients to organize their thoughts and compare different properties based on specific criteria. It aids in their decision-making process. Start the tour in the most impressive room in the house can create a positive first impression and highlight a key selling point of the property early in the showing. It can build excitement and interest. Using excessive technical real estate or construction terms can confuse and overwhelm the client. The agent's role is to explain features and benefits in a clear and understandable way. While some specific terms might be necessary, relying heavily on jargon will likely hinder communication and make the client feel less informed and more intimidated. Therefore, the agent should focus on clear communication and understanding the client's perspective, rather than using confusing technical language. Question 630. Ruby owns a tire store. In consideration for an option to buy a parcel of land from Betsy, Ruby offered Betsy 4 free tires. Assuming that the other elements of a valid option are present, the option is A. Invalid, tires cannot serve as consideration. B. Valid, if the value of the tires exceeds $400. C. Valid, if Betsy accepts the tires as consideration. D. Valid, if Betsy owns a car. Correct answer is C. Valid, if Betsy accepts the tires as consideration. In contract law, consideration is something of value exchanged between parties to form a binding agreement. This can be money, goods, services, or even a promise. The law generally doesn't dictate the adequacy of the consideration, whether it's a fair market value. As long as the optionee accepts the consideration as having some value, then the offer is supported by consideration and legal. The specific monetary value of the consideration isn't the determining factor for validity, as long as both parties agree to it. Even if the tires were worth less than $400, if Betsy accepted them as the price for granting Ruby the option, it would likely be valid. Whether Betsy owns a car is irrelevant to the validity of the consideration. The key is whether she agreed to accept the tires as the price for the option. She might value them for resale or any other reason. Therefore, the validity of the option contract hinges on Betsy's acceptance of the tires as the consideration for granting Ruby the option. Question 631. To hold real property as a tenant in common, parties must A. Have undivided interests. B. Be married to each other. C. Have equal interests. D. Inhabit the property. Correct answer is A. Have undivided interests. Tenancy in common is a form of co-ownership where two or more individuals hold title to real property. The key characteristics are 1. Undivided interests. Each owner has the right to possess and use the entire property, even though their ownership percentage might be different. There are no specific, physically divided portions belonging exclusively to one co-tenant. 2. No right of survivorship. Unlike joint tenancy, if a tenant in common dies, their interest in the property passes to their heirs or is directed by their will. It's not automatically to the surviving co-tenants. 3. Unequal shares possible. Co-tenants can own different percentages of the property, e.g., one owns 60%, the other owns 40%. 4. Right to convey. Each tenant in common can sell, gift, or devise their individual interest in the property without the consent of the other co-tenants. There is no requirement for tenants in common to physically live on the property to be co-owners. It is an ownership interest, not necessarily a possessory one at all times for all owners. Therefore, the essential requirement for holding real property as tenants in common is that the parties have undivided interests in the property. Question 632. Surveys show that classified ads are most commonly used by people as their primary method for finding real estate properties. A. In their 50s. B. In their 30-40s. C. In their 20s. D. In all age groups. Correct answer is A. In their 50s. Younger individuals, particularly those in their 20s, are often very comfortable with online platforms and mobile apps for searching. While they might encounter classified ads, it's less likely to be their primary method compared to dedicated real estate websites and apps. Over the past couple of decades, the real estate search process has largely shifted from print classifieds to online platforms like Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin, and Craigslist. These platforms offer more comprehensive listings, photos, virtual tours, and search filters. While individuals in their 50s and even 30-40s might still occasionally look at classifieds, they are also likely to utilize online resources extensively, often having adapted to these digital tools. While some individuals in all age groups might glance at classifieds, it's unlikely to be the primary method for a significant portion of those beyond their early adulthood, who have grown up with or adapted to online searching. Therefore, classified ads are likely to be relied upon most as a primary search method by a segment that might be less familiar with or have less access to sophisticated online tools, or those specifically looking for very local or niche listings that might still be advertised in print. This demographic is less likely to be the majority in their 20s in 2025, given the prevalence of online real estate platforms. However, it's important to note that surveys can vary in their methodology and findings. If specific recent survey data were available, it could provide a more definitive answer. Given the options and general trends, the most plausible answer, although perhaps counterintuitive at first glance, leans towards in their 20s if we consider a segment that might be utilizing a broader range of, sometimes less mainstream, resources, including potentially older habits they observed or more localized, less technologically advanced approaches. This is a nuanced question without specific survey data for 2025. Younger individuals are heavily online. Older individuals might have more ingrained habits of checking print media. Therefore, classifieds as a primary method might skew slightly older. Classified ads might still hold some relevance for an older demographic less comfortable with or trusting of online-only searches. Given this revised thought process, the answer might lean towards in their 50s. They might supplement online searches with classifieds or rely on them more if they are less digitally inclined. While online platforms dominate, classified ads might still be a primary source for a segment of the population that is less tech-savvy or prefers traditional methods. This demographic is more likely to be in older age groups. Therefore, the most plausible answer is A. In their 50s. Question 633. The Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, RESPA, designed to protect consumers from abuses by loan servicers, applies to all of the following, except A. Requiring lenders to provide loan applicants with good faith estimates of closing costs within 3 days of their application. B. Compelling closing agents make a uniform settlement statement available to the buyer at least 1 day before closing. C. Loan transactions being used for temporary financing, such as a bridge loan. D. A borrower being pressured to make excessive contributions to an escrow account designed to cover recurring costs like taxes and insurance. Correct answer is C. Loan transactions being used for temporary financing, such as a bridge loan. RESPA is a federal law that covers most federally related mortgage loans. Federally related mortgage loans, generally subject to RESPA, are secured by liens on residential properties like houses, condos, and manufactured homes. These loans are typically made by federally insured lenders or are insured, guaranteed by federal agencies such as FHA or VA, or are intended for sale to entities like Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. However, RESPA specifically exempts certain types of loans, including 1. Temporary financing. This includes bridge loans, short-term loans used to finance the purchase of a new home before the sale of the borrower's existing home, and construction loans. 2. Business purpose loans. 3. Agricultural loans. 4. Loans on property of 25 acres or more. 5. Home equity lines of credit, HELOCs. 6. Reverse mortgages. Therefore, C. Loan transactions being used for temporary financing, such as a bridge loan, is the exception and is generally not covered by RESPA. Question 634. The parole evidence rule states that, in most situations, A. Oral agreements can always be used to modify written agreements. B. Written agreements take priority over oral agreements. C. An oral agreement is a quasi-contract. D. Oral agreements are always invalid. Correct answer is B. Written agreements take priority over oral agreements. The parole evidence rule aims to prevent oral agreements from altering the terms of a final written contract. While there are exceptions, e.g., subsequent modifications, prior or simultaneous oral agreements usually cannot change the written terms. A quasi-contract, also known as an implied-in-law contract, is not an actual contract but a legal obligation imposed by a court to prevent unjust enrichment. It arises when there's no agreement, written or oral, but one party has conferred a benefit on another under circumstances where it would be unfair for the recipient to retain the benefit without paying for it. Oral agreements can be valid and legally binding, especially for certain types of contracts that are not required to be in writing under the statute of frauds. However, they may be harder to prove in court due to a lack of written documentation. The parole evidence rule is a principle in contract law that governs the admissibility of evidence of prior or contemporaneous oral, or written, agreements when a written contract exists. The parole evidence rule generally prevents the introduction of prior or simultaneous agreements in court if they contradict, modify, or add to the terms of a written contract intended to be the complete and final agreement. This rule aims to ensure that the written contract stands as the definitive record of the parties' obligations. Question 635. The likeliest person to incur a prepayment penalty in a real estate deal is the A. Seller, B. Borrower, C. Lender, D. Owner. Correct answer is A. Seller. Alienation clause, due on sale clause in a mortgage contract requires the borrower, who is often the seller, to repay the entire outstanding loan balance if the property is sold or transferred. This effectively acts as a prepayment of the loan triggered by the sale. Therefore, in the context of a sale that triggers a due on sale clause, the seller is the likeliest person to be responsible for repaying the entire loan amount, which can be seen as a form of prepayment penalty in that it necessitates paying off the loan earlier than the original schedule. The lender is the one who receives the prepayment penalty, not the one who incurs it.